Dorothy, good morning.
Hi.
I
How's it
remember
going?
good. I remember back in the day when you would come on virtual meetings and your name would be Juan.
Yes, Juan Sanchez. Yeah, he doesn't work for the city anymore, and I can't talk about why he doesn't work for the city anymore. We have to have that as a private conversation.
But I just remember you'd always come in and you'd be Juan. And I'm like,
Juan.
you're not Juan.
Until I figured out how to change my name. I don't understand how that happened because I was signing in on my account and my credentials. He had used mine on his credentials, so I don't know why it hijacked it in the first place.
Yeah. It was always funny to see Juan.
Yeah, and sometimes Juan got blamed for stuff. Well, Juan said, "This is how Juan feels about that."
Well, good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good.
Good. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started for our graduation today. And I'd like to thank the Texas State Library and Archives Commission for providing the funding for allowing us to do this training. And I would also like to thank Eric Lashley for his great presenting over the last several weeks and months, I guess. And I'm going to wrap this up today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Lashley.
Well, thank you. Want to also thank the State Library for their support, and thank Plan, and thank Jeffrey. He's done a great job of being the producer of this program. So I really want to thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's been great for me to talk about leadership and then try to practice what I preach, in my everyday world, which is not always easy. I also want to start by just thanking the Texas libraries and how resilient you guys are. And it is really, I feel really awful when I read all the stuff that's happening with this inflation going on in Texas. And then yesterday I was reading the Little versus Llano County federal reversal in the Fifth Circuit, which will impact libraries and may actually go to the Supreme Court. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there are tough times right now in Texas and other libraries, but also just want y'all to know how much I appreciate what y'all do and how hard y'all work for your communities. The other thing I do want to celebrate some successes, and one, I got an email and a little video of the groundbreaking for the new Dale Valley Library. And I really feel proud about that because that was a project that when I was with Plan, we were helping Brittany Burke Walker, before she was even the director, start planning that. And now to see that they've broken ground on that project, it's going to be a wonderful project. So again, good things are happening in Texas. And I just wanted to give you guys a hooray and a shout out for what y'all are doing. So anyway, so today I just wanted to go over kind of what we went over during this project, and then at the end, if there are anything else people want to say and other issues that are out there, I'd be glad to address them. The big thing though, what I wanted to, when I started this, was some of the big lesson for me in my career was that learning that difference between being a manager and a leader. And that was such an eye-opener for me because I was hired, and in a very short period of time, I became a manager, and I wanted to be the best manager I could be. And I thought I was a good manager, and I probably was, but I realized that I could be the greatest manager in the world, but I wasn't actually leading things. I was getting the timesheets done. I was getting the schedules done. Everything was very efficient, but I didn't have that big picture and getting people moving in a direction that needed to change the culture. So just that difference between learning the difference between a leader and a manager, and a leader can be a good manager. They're not like, a manager is not a bad thing, but they are different. And so I just wanted to kind of focus on that again, where again, leader looks at the big picture. The manager is a day-to-day. They're getting those schedules done. They're getting the timesheets done. They're taking care of things that need to take care of that day-to-day business. A leader inspires and has followers. You know, a manager has subordinates, and they're there for a reason because there's a hierarchy. Leaders are driven by change, innovation, and growth. I mean, a leader, that's the whole thing. Change is the thing. Managers are more interested in stability and status quo. They don't want the change because it just disrupts whatever's going on. Decision-making, leaders take risk. That's the big thing. Leaders are risk takers. Managers avoid risk. They're the risk adverse. They're, you know, risk management. Orientation, leaders build relationships and culture, and, you know, managers maximize structure and efficiency. Leaders plan long-term. They have long-term strategies. Managers are more into the short-term, day-to-day. You know, they're just taking care of business. And again, the results are leaders are transformational. They really take things to a different level. I've had the privilege of working with city managers, and some are really have been wonderful leaders and others aren't so much. And you can tell that leadership really matters when you have a good leader that has a great vision and can inspire people to move forward. If you don't have it, then it's status quo, and there's nothing worse sometimes than working in a organization that's just kind of stuck. So we talked a little bit about the difference between leaders and managers, and then we moved on to vision, mission, and goals. And we talked a lot about how a lot of libraries have a mission statement and they have a strategic plan, but they don't often have a vision statement. And the difference between a vision statement and a mission statement, a vision statement outlines where you want to be. It kind of gives you that the blue sky. This is where we want to be. We want to be the greatest small library in Texas or whatever it is. And it should be very aspirational. It'd be something that's really going to be hard to attain, but it's out there. We're going to be the greatest small library in Texas or the greatest small library in America or whatever it is. And then you have your mission is, you know, why you do what you do. And then it's linked to a strategic plan that has goals and objectives and that you're, you know, working through that plan. We also have values, and that's just something that we see right now where our values are in conflict with some of the legislature. You know, we believe in freedom to read and the First Amendment and having a very democratic, that we're going to have a very well-balanced collection. And that's our core values. And we believe also in public service, and we believe that we should serve everyone. And those are really important things. We believe in community connection. We believe in having a safe and welcoming library. We believe in respect for all humans and everyone in our community. We believe in lifelong learning from the smallest preschooler to a senior citizen. That's kind of our goal. I talked a little bit about the rule of three and trying to keep your mission or vision, three things: engage, enlighten, empowered. Or you see that creativity, community, lifelong learning, discover, learn, create. Those are things that people can remember. People remember those three things: educate, empower, and enrich. You see that over and over again in libraries where they have the rule of three. So we talked a little bit about that. The other thing we talked about is leadership style. And I think this is so important for you to know yourself and you know your style. There's really no right or wrong. It's just knowing how you behave and what information you get and how you use that information and how you communicate that as a leader. And then the other important thing about this is knowing the people that you work with, what their leadership style is or what their personality style is. And it's so important because there are so many different styles. And if you want to be an effective leader, you need to know how those styles work. Because if you have a city manager or a boss or a board member or anybody in power, city council member, mayor, county judge, that is a different style than you, then you need to learn that style and what works for them. How do they want to gather information? Are they analytical where they just want the facts? Just give me the facts. I don't want to get any warm or fuzzies, versus they want the warm and fuzzies. They want to know about those children at that story time, and they want to know how libraries impact people emotionally. Knowing how those leaders think and how they take information is so critical, because if you're giving it to them the wrong way, they're just blowing you off right off the bat. They're just looking differently at that information. So knowing that you as a leader has to be very flexible in your style to, again, get what you want is really important. So again, learning the different styles, and there's a million personality tests out there. There's a million of those things, but knowing who you are, just pick one. They're all very similar. And learning the other styles and how to deal with those other styles is really important. So again, a great leader is often can identify the other person's style quickly. They just really quickly. I mean, I usually would know when if I went to a Rotary Club meeting or something, you can pretty much pick it up by how they talk or how they interact with other people or how they don't talk. Sometimes, again, they're the quiet type, the introverted in how they work. The other thing is you notice a lot of times from them, the chit chat versus direct approach, where some people like to chit chat and they want to have that personal relationship. Others are just like, just the facts, the dragnet, just the facts, ma'am, and really want to stick to that. But anyway, it really helps as a leader to know those styles and really stick to it. The other one is, do you want to win? We talked about, do you want to win? And this is really important. Again, leadership, again, is not about status quo. It's about having a vision, getting to that vision. And a lot of times you've got to compromise, or you need to figure out, selfishly, what's best for our organization and how do we move forward. I have if Melissa from Tri-County comes on, I want her to tell a story, because she talked at the last training about an issue that she had. And if she comes on, I'll have her tell the story. But she had a success, and she called me to let me know that they had a success. And part of it was this right here. Did she want to win? And it was tough for her because she had to go against her city manager, and it was really difficult, but she won. She ended up winning. And I want to, again, celebrate a success there, because that was tough. And leadership is not always easy, especially if you're really having to stand up for your organization, stand up for what is right, and go up against the city manager and know that it may not go your way, but she had a success. And if she comes on, I'll let her tell the success. If not, I'll tell the success. But I really want to know that she really stuck to this, and she could have just like, we lost, or we're not getting what we want, and just let it go. But I think that was a real demonstration of leadership, that she didn't let it go, and she ended up really helping the library. That will help the library for years to come. And so again, her strength and leadership and doing what was right and standing up to a boss is not always easy, and y'all know that. And so I wanted to give her credit for that. But again, I think this is important. This is something that I learned too through my career, is the concept of winning. And it's like, there's so many libraries, and again, especially small libraries is really tough. And I really appreciate this, but there are times where I would hear this when I would go out and meet with small libraries. They said, we're just trying to keep our head down. And I'm like, okay, how did that work out for you? At some point you've got to take the risk, and you got to figure out the strategy. And that's why we talked about advocacy a lot. It may not be you, but if you're working behind the scenes to get your advocates to go to a city council meeting or a county commissioners meeting, a board meeting, whatever it takes to really advocate for you, that's important. And so again, that work behind the scenes is so important to get that win. If you keep your head down, then you're not going to get it. If you don't ask, you're not going to get, you're not going to receive. And so that's part of leadership, just making those tough decisions that you're going to make things happen. Let's see. So again, part of your job as a leader is getting the resources you need to fulfill your mission. If you want to win, you must be willing to be judged by others and not let it get to you, which is really tough for a lot of people. I mean, that is, again, an ego thing. I used to use this, and I still do this, use this term for my own staff. I would say, do you want to win? Because I want them to win. I want them to be successful. But a lot of times if they're coming to me for a program or they want support or money for a certain thing, and they're doing a poor job of convincing me, I would say, hey, do you want to win? And what I was saying to them is, I want to support you, but if you keep doing it this way, it's not going to happen. So let's reframe it. And the good staff, they understand that. They want to win. The others get their ego involved and are like, well, this is my idea. This is the way it's going to go. And it's like, again, you got to learn to compromise. You need to know, are you winning or losing? And a lot of people, they want to do it their way. And sometimes that's the losing way. So again, I really want people to understand that part of leadership is trying to figure out how to get the resources you need for your organization and how to win. And that often means compromise or being very strategic on how you approach what's going on. We talked a little bit about winning and why it's so important to win. And I think, again, it's a psychological thing. It's a motivator. It's an achievement. You feel like, hey, we got it. Pride, satisfaction. And it helps your staff and your volunteers to feel like they're with a winner. Like I always say, after the Super Bowl, everybody's wearing an Eagles jersey. They didn't even like the Eagles, but once the Super Bowl, everybody's an Eagles fan. You know, they want to be a part of a winner. They like, you know, setting an example. They like creating a legacy and a narrative, and that's great. But, you know, losing, too, is a great opportunity. You learn from losing. You grow. You learn resiliency. You learn humility. You embrace failure because that's a life lesson for you to do better. It's very humbling. There's no doubt about it. Losing is a humbling effect. But, again, it can help you build for the next win. Some of my biggest defeats ended up being the best thing that happened. And, you know, at the time, it's hard to believe that. But at the time, you know, you dust yourself off, you cry, you get upset for a day or two, and then you pick yourself up and you get up. That's resiliency. And that's, again, part of leadership. It's like, yep, we got to keep moving. If you just sit there and dwell on it, that does anybody any good. And that's the other thing, you know, as a leader, your staff or the people around you, they're looking to you for that strength. And it's okay to be vulnerable and weak for a day or two, but you got to pick yourself up, shake yourself off, get the support you need, but you are the leader and you need to lead by example. We also talked about winning over a reluctant staff. This is, again, you know, part of it. We're talking about change management, which I'll get to. But as y'all know, a lot of times you got to win within, and you got to figure out how to win over a reluctant staff. And so the biggest thing with that is you're building trust. Trust is the biggest thing you need to do as a relationship builder. You got to have those open lines of communication. You got to provide clarity, like this is where we're going, and you're very clear, this is where we're going. Foster a safe environment. If people don't feel safe or they feel like their job's in jeopardy, they're not going to feel buying into any change that you have going. Recognize and appreciate the contributions of the member. Always praise them, you know, appreciate what they've done in the past, honor the past, but innovate for the future, you know. Keep moving for the future. Provide feedback so they can feel like they're part of what's going on with the team. Be empathetic. Realize that this change may be, you know, difficult for them. And delegate with care. You know, when you delegate tasks, make sure that they're the right task for people. You're playing to their strengths and not their weaknesses. Then we get into change management, and change management that's so much about leadership. It's about change and not status quo. But change is tough for a lot of people. Change can be, you know, difficult. And what people worry about is that when they're going through a change, it's that feeling of loss. And so you need to be right up front with people. Like, they're afraid that this change is going to cause loss. There's fear of losing safety. Will this jeopardize their job? But whatever change it is, there's freedom. Like, again, people were working remotely. Now they're coming back, in some industries, and that is different. They're losing their freedom of working at home. People worry about their status. Is this changing the hierarchy or the pecking order at the library? Their sense of belonging, like their job was cataloger. Now you're changing them to whatever. And then the hardest one is fairness. Is the change fair? And dealing with that is really difficult when you deal with change management. The other thing we talked a little bit about is what stage your organization it is. Is it ready for change? And we talked about the 5 stages of organization. The first one being a waiting place where people feel very stuck. There's little energy. They're waiting for change, but they can't really agree on what is wrong. And then there's the impasse stage where people can name what's wrong. They say enough is enough, we're through, but they're confused with really how to move forward. They know there is a problem with X, but they still don't know how to move forward. Then there's the catalytic change where things start to happen. People can see change and but they're still worried that change is happening too fast. It's just inevitable. But then you get into the growth where, there's definitely widespread forward movement. There's energy. People feel that they're on the right path. They work deep underlining issues. But at that point, they tend to rest on their laurels. They think they've made it. And then there's this sustain and renew where, again, you feel like you've definitely made it, that we're done. We've accomplished our goals. And this often happens when you build a new library. So, Del Valley will go through this where they're going to spend this next 18 months, 2 years, building this new library. They're going to move in. They're going to feel great. It's going to be wonderful. They'll have more people that ever come to their libraries, and they're going to think, we finally did it. And it's like, nope, you just started all over. You just start all over again, and you raise the bar once more. And it is exhausting at times, right? But that's what a good leader does. It's like, okay, you can stop, get gas, celebrate your success, but then you're off again to the next thing. And you're thinking 10 years down the road, what do we do 10 years from now? How do we still expand services in the building that we have? Or are we expanding the bookmobile service or whatever? So the last thing that we talked about was the boards, foundations, and friends groups. And this is so critical in so many ways because, again, these are people you have to work with. It's all about relationships. And even though most of these are somewhat independent, you as a leader influence the direction on where this goes in most cases. So again, it's really important to have a really good relationship with the boards and commissions or the friends group. So many of the groups, though, you can tell when they're struggling, when they have, irregular meetings or they're having a hard time having a quorum. So I went over kind of like the best practices for boards and commissions or the friends groups. And they're basically the same. It's like, have a regular meeting. If they're starting to have problems with a quorum, there's probably some weakness there. There's something going on. The really boring things like bylaws and all that, those are really important though. And again, if your organization isn't even following your bylaws, that's an issue where you're not holding elections or you're just, having the same people on the board over and over again. You're not getting new membership. Term limits, I talked a lot about term limits. I think it's important that if there are term limits in your bylaws, follow them. If they're not term limits in your bylaws, put them in, make a bylaw amendment to your bylaws to have term limits. I think it's really important to have fresh blood. For friends and foundation groups, having the director as an ex officio member is best practices so that the nonprofits aren't doing something different than what the director wants them to do, or it has a different vision of the library than the director. And then advocacy. Each one of these groups is your biggest advocate for the library, and that should be a prime role that they feel. It's not just about getting money for the summer reading program or whatever it is that those organizations are funding. It's advocating for if you need new facilities or new carpet or paint or whatever it is that your library needs, they need to be advocates for that. Know that with those groups, there's always potential for conflict. Anytime we deal with relationships, there's always a potential for conflicts. A lot of times it's over money, how to spend the money and how money is being spent. Often it's when there's new leadership, there's just a difference of opinion or difference of speed of change or whatever it is. But again, as the leader, your goal is to maintain a positive relationship and invest time in, making sure that happens. The better you prepare your advocates, the better they'll be when censorship happens or challenges happen at your library. When budgets start getting cut, you want to minimize the losses. You don't want to be completely have a higher cut than the fire department or police and other things when you're competing with other things. So to finish this off, I just wanted to say that big thing about leadership is trust. We've talked about trust in relationships, and keeping that trust, maintaining that trust, building that trust with people is extremely important with your staff, your patrons, your community. The other thing is, again, doing what's right. This is tough, and things are going to, get tougher in Texas, I think, unfortunately, if some of the legislation goes through, and it's going to be tough that librarians who, have been doing a job and being respected in their community for so long are going to have to make tough decisions on their careers and what's right. How do we continue to serve people? And that's going to be tough. This is a different time or difficult time for librarians right now. And it's so ridiculous, in my opinion. I'm very proud to be a librarian, and I don't recognize what they're saying about us. It's just so crazy. I always think that leadership is very easy when everybody gets along and you have more money than you can spend, and the board members are all engaged, and the city manager and the city council, their county judge just loves the library, and the economy is great, but that it's rare that those things all align. And so again, leadership is difficult. It can be very enjoyable in a lot of ways, but it's different than being a manager in a lot of ways. And so that's why I really like talking about leadership, because you're dealing with a lot of philosophical things. You're dealing with where the rubber meets the road. The other thing, just last words of wisdom I want to give people is use the network that Plan has. Use the network in your region. If you have libraries near you, reach out to the librarians in those areas and have a quarterly lunch with them and talk about these issues, because your general public doesn't know what you're going through, but your other librarians, they know what you're going through. So having a support system is really important. I think also just sharing ideas is always a great idea, especially if there's any resource sharing that you can do with the neighboring libraries. That's always awesome. I think we just get so busy with our day-to-day operating, especially the small libraries where it's just only a handful of people working the library or volunteers. You're relying on volunteers heavily. But I think part of leadership is realizing you have to stop and get gas. You have to recharge your batteries. You need that other people out there to help recharge you and let you know that you can kind of let down your hair or talk about the business of what's going on in libraries right now in the legislature. And I think it's really important to have that networking. So since I don't see that Melissa joined us from Tri-County, I just want to give a shout out to her in what she had done in her leadership. So she had contacted me, and I think at the last leadership meeting we had, she had an issue where they had an estate, a patron who used the library heavily, that left money to the library for, I think, children's programming, and the city took it and used it for a community room, to create a new community room. And she was asking, well, what should we do? And I said, I would go back and talk to the executor of that will and say, the purpose was for a children's room. It seems like the city has done something different with that. And so she did that and went back and had a meeting set up with the city manager, which I know she's stressed out about. But she was right. She needed to address this issue. The money was not spent the way it was meant to be spent. And when she met with the city manager, he basically agreed and decided that, yep, that community room should be the libraries primarily, and that they should change it up so that it's more children friendly, and the library will have priority, and then the community can use it after when the library doesn't need it. And I just wanted to give Melissa a big kudos for standing up, doing what was right, getting what was best for the library when, the relationship between the city council and the library, they just don't have a high opinion right now of the library. And the good news is she stuck to her guns and got what she needed. So I give her a kudos for that, because that was difficult. I know how difficult it is to go up and have that meeting with the city manager when you're right, but you don't know how it's going to end up, and turned out the right way. And the library benefited from her standing up. So at this point, that's like everything that we went through. I appreciate that. Is there any successes out there that anybody wants to share? I'm glad that, even during this difficult times, there are great things that libraries are doing, and I appreciate that. I know that most libraries are getting ready to go into summer reading, and that's the best time of the year. In some ways, it's the time that libraries are usually the busiest, and you see all the kids. So if you have summer reading program things out there, just let me know. But I'll turn this over to you. If there's anything y'all want to add, just chime in. Okay. Anyway, well, that was my final thing. Again, I want to thank Plan. I want to thank the state library. I want to thank the participants. Again, I've enjoyed it. And with that, I think I'll end it, Jeffrey.
All right. Well, that's it. That concludes our training. Thank you again, Eric, for all your time and your presentations. Really appreciate you. And everybody else have a great day. And I will be recording them like usual, and I will be sending them out as soon as I can.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Eric.
Y'all have a great day.